My name's Anthony Renshaw, and if there's any mistakes in this talk, loosely called "What's Love Got to Do with It?" or if it demonstrates in some way a transparent lack of love, thank you so much. Please put it down to the plane trip. Flying from New South Wales to Perth, you think you're just ducking over to another local city. But that's actually 5 hours. In Europe, you fly from London to Tel Aviv. I think even further. And the cultural range that you cross when you fly from London to Tel Aviv is extraordinary. It's not so extraordinary here. It's a remarkable thing that we have in this vast continent, a singularity of identity. And just wondering like that, wondering at that in such a huge expanse of land where it takes you 5 hours to travel at 700 kilometres an hour, or whatever it is, 5 hours to cross it from one side to the other, but still across that wide expanse, there's still a singularity of identity. It's not so easy to tell in Australia by your accent if you come from Perth or you come from Sydney. Now, halfway across in Adelaide, it is easy. But I think that's an aberration rather than a confirmation. So what is it that holds all that together? How is that possible? Have you ever wondered where accents come from? It's a remarkable thing that people born in one physical location will speak, and we'll just deal with English, but will speak English in a particular way, that their consonants and vowels will have a specific intonation that they all share, as if the landscape in some way shapes the way that people speak. Something has held this country together so that the variations in time and place, in landscape and environment, don't affect our language so much. What holds it together? Well, what holds anything together? And really, that's the subject of this morning's talk. What is it that holds things together? What's love got to do with that? Now, indirectly also, the talk is about what's love got to do with philosophy. So we'll start with the two protagonists in our love story, Sophie and Phil. Now, most of you will already know that the etymology of the English word philosophy is from two Greek words, philia and sophia. By the time Plato wrote his dialogues, philia sophia was a common expression in the Greek language, so everybody was familiar with philia sophia, a friend of philosophy. So philia denotes friendship. And this word in English has a number of associated meanings. Friendship is not the same as association with. Just a loose association with somebody is not the same as having a friendship with them. We all know how much we value our friendships. And lasting friendships, real friendships, are much more than just a loose association. In Greek, the association of people together is denoted by the word storge. So philosophy is not philostorge. It's not a loose association with philia, wisdom. It's friendship with wisdom. Now, if you were going to have, and pardon the expression, but a hookup with Sophie, with wisdom, that would be eros sophia. So these three Greek words, philia, storge, and eros, are all translated in one way or another by our English word love. So love is this English word that's plastered over all sorts of emotional conditions. And the emotional condition can be one that's simply tempered by loose association, one that's deepened by lasting and enduring friendship. It's not one, or it can describe the transitory spike of physical infatuation. But our question here this morning is to find out what it really is. A true friendship with Sophia, wisdom, a true friendship is unity with wisdom. It works towards unity, like any real friendship does. When all division between the friend Philia and the beautiful Sophia disappears, there is complete unity. I hope I didn't confuse you there, don't I? Philia is wisdom, Sophia is love. So a true dissolution of division between Philia and Sophia disappears. When that happens, there's complete unity between Philia, wisdom, and Sophia, the friend. Sophia and Philia. Now that form of love in Greek is called agape. And there's no corresponding English expression for it but love. So love has got everything to do with philosophy. Absolutely everything. But what that is, that love that has to do with philosophy, is open to inquiry. So when you say I love you to somebody, you can mean I befriend you, I celebrate you as my partner, I want you, I need you, I hold and cherish, serve and protect, nourish you. That little phrase, I love you, is for most people one of the most profound three-sentence statements that they make in their lives. A declaration that speaks of so much more than what we can easily articulate. So person A might say, I love you, meaning I fancy you, while the other person hears, when they hear the phrase I love you, the other person hears, I want to have children with you, spend my whole life with you, I want to tickle your back and talk about the relationship. So we need to have a clear understanding of what these terms mean when we use the words, I love you. And to make matters worse, our English word love has got its own history. It's got old Germanic roots in the old English luthu, meaning affection. And that comes from a Sanskrit root, lub, which simply means lust. So the English words carries out all those colours that cross the whole extremes from affection and lust, as well as connotations of all those Greek words. So the question is, what are we talking about? Now, this is not meant to be a straightforward lecture where I'm going to tell you what we're going to talk about. What we're going to engage in is an inquiry into this, and we're going to engage in it together. Socrates says in the Theaetetus that philosophy begins in wonder. A wonder can be a verb, where you wonder about something, or it can be a noun, which describes a condition or a state of suspended awe, when you're in a state of wonder. But you can't get to that state of wonder without first wondering. The whole heart of philosophy is about wondering. And the Greek word that's in Socrates for wonder, in that philosophy begins in wonder, is the Greek word thaumazo, to wonder, to be astonished. And there's a lovely story about that word itself. Do you know how the Greeks built a mythology around many of the fundamental conditions of a human existence? So they made a being out of thaumazo, wonder. And this thaumazo was the child of Pontus, the personification of all oceanic waters. The child of Pontus, all the waters of all the oceans, and the child of Gaia, earth. So Thaumus is this child born of the full extent of manifest physical creation. All the waters of all the worlds and all the earths gathered together. And this Thaumus is the personification of wonder. Now Thaumus marries Electra. She's the personification of the amber-tinged clouds at sunset. Thaumus, wonder, marries Electra, the personification of those honey-coloured clouds at sunset. And they have a child, 2 children. Iris, who's the personification of the rainbow, and Harpiae, the personification of the winds. So Thaumus, wonder, born of all the oceans and the earth, married to Electra, sunset clouds, gives birth to the rainbow, the bridge from earth to heaven over which a human being can ascend into the divine realm, and the wind, which carry people on voyages of discovery. It is a lovely story. Philosophy begins with the birth of Thaumus, wonder, in our own beings. And the way to do that, the way to facilitate that birth, is to ask questions. There's no other way to do it. And they can't be questions that we're used to, the sort of questions that we ask at dinner parties when you're trying to tell people what you think. So somebody says something and your question is, well, do you really think that, or wouldn't you think this? This is a real question, real questions, where you're inquiring into the nature of something. Now, we're lucky to be blessed by those sorts of questions and that state of inquiry at major turning points in our life. And for too often, and for too many people, those turning points are prefigured by tragedy, deprivation of some kind, trauma, where they start to really ask questions about where they're going and what they're on about. But there comes a point in the journey of the soul in eternity where there's been enough appreciation that things as they are won't provide fullness of life, that there's a questioning nature born in the soul. Mr. Kruger mentioned this morning that we're here to celebrate the humanity in man. That questioning nature is integral to being a human being, and it rises quite naturally the more human we are. Because the fact is that you are far, far more intelligent and discerning than you can begin to imagine. But that intelligence and discernment can only arise when we're really human. Now we're going to tickle it into birth with some questions. So I'm going to ask a series of questions about love. The point is not to respond to them, but to consider them. Just reflect on them, all right? So you're all up for this? So we're about to be pushed by the winds of Harpiae up the rainbow of Iris to meet our mother and father, Thalamus and Electra. And the first question is this. What does love feel like? Now, what would be best is if you just sat with the question, just for a second or two. I'll leave enough time for that. If you want a transcript of these questions afterwards, then I'll provide it. But it'd be better just to sort of sit with the question rather than write those down. Because it's the questioning process that's really the most important. It's the reflective questioning process. So the first question, what does love feel like? There'll be an infinite variety of answers to that question and no right answer. You're asking yourself, where does love come from? Does it come from a beautiful scene in nature? Does love come from there? Does love come from a beautiful work of art, a painting, a piece of music, a poem? Does love come from there? Does love come from seeing an act of pure goodness? Perfect goodness. Does love come from out there? Does love come from above? Does it descend upon us from up there? Where does it come from? Does it come from in here? Does it come from there? How does love come? When it comes, how does it come? Does it come only when you're ready? Or does it come by surprise? Does it come from good fortune, good looks, good karma? How does love come? The important thing here is not to jump in with an answer. Be wide open with the possibilities. Don't jump in, especially now, when you consider, what does love make you do? Does it ever stop you from doing things? Does it make you stronger? Or does it make you weaker, vulnerable? Does it support you, or do you support it? Does it hold people together, or does it drive people apart? What does love do? It's been said that greater love hath no man than this, that he lay down his life for his friends. Is this true? Is sacrifice the best part of love? Is it better to be loved or to love? Khalil Gibran said that work is love made visible. Is this true? Is work love made visible? Is this what work should be? Could be? Maybe? Is it better to love what you do or to only do what you love? When did love begin? Does it begin only when we feel it? Is it still here even if we don't feel it? Did love ever have a beginning? When did love begin? Does love have an end? What would it be like to live in a world without love? Does love have an end? Now, the beautiful thing about wonder is that it brings the mind to stillness. Wonder's not there, and the spirit of inquiry isn't there to create agitation, but to bring the focused being to a state of suspended apprehension so that we don't know, and we know that we don't know, and we're happy to be in that state. It's supremely confident. It's poised. The noisy part of the mind steps back and makes peace. And it's mostly because it realizes it hasn't got a hope of answering these questions. The noisy part of the mind can't answer those questions. So it quietens down. And the other thing about wondering like this is that in some sort of indescribable way, it invokes the very being of the subject under inquiry. In the room now. This fine, fine, fine substance, which we can't see, hear, taste, touch, or smell, but which fills us with hope, makes our ideals shine, and makes us feel whole. And any one of us now, after a little inquiry like that, could speak of it and give it form or shape. But what's even more beautiful about this is that if this inquiry unfolds in the same way, on a daily basis, with reflective wondering like this, what would it be like if the whole circle of the world in which you lived and moved was nourished by that same ground of confident, loving, open inquiry? You'd be the most popular person in the world. You wouldn't be able to meet all the invitations that you'd receive. People would want to be in our company. Now, when Socrates asked Phaedrus, he asked Phaedrus they were sitting under a plane tree outside Athens. Now, you know, the plane tree is the philosopher's tree, mainly because of the way it appears in the Platonic dialogues. But he's sitting under this plane tree with Phaedrus, and young Phaedrus asks him to give a speech on love. And what Socrates did right at that point was he called on the powers of the muses to speak through him. He thought that they would do a better job than he would do. So he gave himself over to these muses, and he asked them to come and take their place in his body and his mind and his heart and speak about love through him. He asked to be inspired because inspiration, this sort of inspiration, where the muse works through a human instrument, is a gift of the gods. It's sometimes been called a madness, and in Plato he calls it a madness, because the speaker is quite literally out of his own mind. Right? He's gone. So Socrates gives several examples of this sort of divine madness. And this is important because the last one, and the most important one that he gives, is the divine madness of love. So it's just interesting to look at the other three to get some sense of what this divine madness might be, what the substance of it is. Socrates says that the first example of divine madness is the divine madness of prophecy. Now, I'm sure that every one of us at some stage or another have been forced to recognise the presence of a prophet in our lives. I know I'm all too often forced to acknowledge my wife as prophetic. And sometimes it's fun and sometimes it's annoying, but you know, she certainly has the power of prophecy about a number of things. But there are other examples as well, where there's a serendipitous situation where things seem to, as it were, come together to produce a prophetic statement about what will follow if you do that. So it's sort of like being taken possession by the divine to prophesize. The best example in ancient Greece was, of course, the muse at Delphi, the Delphic oracle. The second kind of madness was the divine frenzy of artistic inspiration. Yeah? And how liberating that is. I can't remember the full speech, but in Midsummer Night's Dream, a poet is described. The poet's eye with a fine frenzy rolling from earth to heaven, from earth to heaven, from heaven to earth, giving to airy nothing a local habitation and a name. So, the divine frenzy of artistic inspiration. The third example he gives is the evocative madness that comes from real prayer. And the prayer that he's talking about isn't just petitions for things for ourselves. The prayer that he's talking about is the utterance of a mantra-like statement, which by virtue of its inspired articulation causes things to happen. And when I was a little boy, I used to dream about having this power so that I could cause things to happen in parents and everybody else around me. I lived in the country. We didn't have a telephone. I had a good friend, Stephen, who lived about 5 kilometres away. And because of the experience of walking down there and finding him home sometimes, and then walking down and finding him not at home at other times, I came to the conclusion that if I walked down to Stephen's place every step of the way thinking he won't be home, he will be home. This is not divine inspiration, I can tell you. This is a mind gone sort of crazy. And if I walked all the way down there thinking that he would be home, he wouldn't be home. So with every footstep, I'd say, he won't be home, he won't be home, he won't be home. As it turned out, I was right 78% of the time. I think it was coincidental. But this is what Socrates means by prayer, is this sort of mantra-like statement which by virtue of its authenticity and its structured inspiration from the divine, it actually makes happen what it says. So there's 3 forms of divine inspiration he's given so far. The divine frenzy of artistic inspiration, the power of oracular prophecy, and the evocative power of real prayer. But then he says that the greatest of all inspirations is love. He says the madness of love is the greatest of heaven's blessings. Madness? Blessing? When did you last feel the blessing of love? I think we all felt it a moment ago here in that inquiry. But we use this word all the time, and it's lost its power. When it was first started, I would expect that it would have had some evocative power similar to the power of a prayer, such as when you do declare, I love you, it causes union to take place. But because of misuse and overuse, the word has lost its power. I mean, how often do we use the expression, I love Brad Pitt? I love guacamole. I just love that Semillon Chardonnay. And it diminishes the power of the word. But the interesting thing about these declarations is that the declaration itself carries some energy. There's some experience that we have, say with a glass of Semillon Chardonnay, that causes us to utter the phrase, I really love this wine. When we declare that we love something, when we actually say it, the feeling of saying it carries some energy of its own. And in a way, it's a way of connecting with the blessing of love. Now, this is important. It's not the object that we love, it's the desire to connect with the current of love. So we have this feeling associated with something. We say, I really love this. We're not saying I really love it to make that more real. We're actually saying I really love it to say, I've now connected with the current of love. It's like a lifeline for us. We can't live without enthusiasm. We can't live without some connection with that current of love that's flowing through everything. What kind of a world would it be where love didn't exist? It would be unlivable. Years ago, I was driving in Scotland with my wife, many years ago, and it was autumn, and we were travelling under an avenue of the most glorious trees, and the sunlight was falling through these gigantic leaves that were tinged with such variations of colour. And when the sunlight hit them, they'd explode with just bliss. And I slowed right down. I eventually stopped the car and I got out. And I walked up in a state of real delight with this tree. And there was one leaf in particular that was huge. And the sun hit it in such a way that even the veins in the leaf you could see. And everything about it was so beautiful. And I reached up and I wanted to show my wife. So I plucked the leaf. Now, at the point that I plucked it, I was, sort of naturally, smiling. And as I brought that leaf down to the palm of my hand, I felt that smile become less true. And I walked back to the car, and I still tried to smile because I wanted to show my wife this and give her the gift that I'd had. But by the time I got back to the car, I realised what had happened, is that I mistook the leaf for the current of love that was illuminating it. And you can't take that and give it to somebody. You join with it, with somebody. How often do we want to share something that we say we really love with other people? Sit down and listen to this song. And if we could, we'd strap them to a chair, And then when they finished it, now you really enjoyed that, didn't you? And it's not the point. The point is that we want to have a shared connection with that current, that underlying current of love. Now, it's a really common mistake, and it's probably the most common mistake in the world, to chase the things we love instead of remembering the current of love that flows through them. And it leads to all sorts of complications. It's not about the object. It's about connecting with the ever-present current of love. It's a hard lesson to learn. And it's a wonderful lesson to learn if we can learn it when we're young, because it frees up the rest of our lives. Shantananda Saraswati was the teacher who provided direction to the School of Philosophy around the world for 30 years until his death in 1997. He said this: "The entire motive force which manifests this creation of animals and inanimate variety is love. The galaxies, stars, creatures, and everything else are set in motion by this conscious force, love." Now, having said that, we can take it as a working hypothesis. It's not a matter of just believing it, it's a matter of taking it and inquiring with it. But the fullness of our lives depends on a really living connection with this love. And if there's no living connection with it, we need to ask why. And we need to ask why in such a way that the connection can be remade. We don't ask why in order to apportion blame. We don't ask why our lives aren't as full as we want them to be by finding cause in things that we can't control. What's the point of that? So in trying to find out why our lives aren't as full as they possibly can be, we've really got two options. One, identify the things that we can't control and let them be. We can't do anything about that. But then identify the things that we can put some measure of control over and work with them. Now, we can't control in any practical sense, in our own particular personal ways. We can't control the time and place that we live in. Not directly. We can't turn the light on in the politicians' halls. Not directly. We can't suspend the bombing in Syria. Not directly. But what can we control? We can control the impulse to love objects, and we can control the memory of the underlying current of love in everything. We can do those things. We can consciously decide to remember the undercurrent of love that runs through everything. Sure, we might say, in some sort of sprightly, half-bright 18-year-old might say, it's just a fancy idea. Well, it might be. But it's workable. Give it a shot. What's the alternative? Blame everyone and everything else? With no hope of resolution? So it's a wonderful opportunity to take this premise. As Shantananda Saraswati says, the entire motive force which manifests this creation of animals and inanimate variety is love or bliss. The galaxies, stars, creatures, and everything else are set in motion by this conscious force, love. The mechanical approach that people, all of us, are subject to taking in the world we live with, the non-conscious mechanical approach, is to go with the object, to become attached to the object. Now, when I first started looking at this subject about 10 years ago, I remember being in the kitchen at home with my wife and my youngest daughter. And I said, this is a pretty intense little sort of subject to talk about, and it needs a bit of a light touch. I'm looking for a joke about attachment. And my wife said, well, there's always that really funny story about the 18-year-old girl who's promised by her boyfriend that if she comes back and lives with him, he'll get a job and do the right thing, and then he leaves her. And my daughter said, yeah, that's very funny. So I got several suggestions like that, to illustrate the power of attachment. And there's no point in actually trying to say, that's not what I'm talking about. Because the fact is that the usual notion of attachment is that it's a positive thing. That our attachments to things are positive. And why do we think they're positive? Because they give us a sense of who we are. Do you know when you're younger and you're trying to work out who you are, And music's always a good thing, right? So you listen around to music to see what it is that you like. And then you get to some music and you say, I like that. So we want to lay a marker down somewhere to say what kind of a person we are. And we do it with all sorts of things. I like this music, I like that food, I like this colour, I like that dress, I like that suit, I like that sound. Declarations of what I like. As if building up this catalogue of attachments is going to create who we are. But all they are is a wardrobe full of costumes. They're things that we have arbitrarily decided define us. The odd thing is that the very substance that's working through that impulse of attachment that makes things stick to us like that is the same substance of love as what we're talking about, because love holds everything together. So it can manifest in its pure form as an unattached, open, sustaining force, or it can operate as attachment, which makes us stick to things and things stick to us. The extreme form of that attachment is obsession, where you become, in a deluded way, completely obsessed with someone or something. The obsessed person holds tightly onto the object, tries to control the so-called beloved, tries to master the beloved, manipulate the beloved. And that kind of love can't last. It's non-sustainable because it destroys the object of its obsession. It eats it up. Love turns into envy. Love turns into envy and anger and hatred. Now, the midway step between the purity of that love and obsession is this midway step of attachment, which seems so normal. You become obsessed through repetitive attachment. We try to find connection with the ever-present current of love by holding on to objects, becoming attached to them. Hold on to objects for as long as you possibly can. Eventually, there'll be an absolute possession by the object, obsession. So the midway step between love and obsession is attachment. There's some sort of personal stake. We bargain. I'll love you if you do this. If you tell me I'm big and strong and handsome, I'll love you. I really mean that too. If you I'm big and strong and handsome, I'll love you. I'll love you if you take me shopping. I'll love you as long as you like the same things I do. So in attachment, we want something from the other person. And that wanting gets between us and the other person. So there's that person, and here's the other person. This person wants something from that person, and the want fills the space between them. That's artificial. You want to tell me what you're thinking? I almost went there myself, but I decided not to. I've got to tell you that in this environment, there's speech bubbles that form above people's heads, and you can actually read the lines. So this wanting of something from the other person gets between them. That's not the natural in-between. The natural substance holding everything together is love. Love is the natural in-between. The unnatural in-between is a personal desire for something from that which we love. That's the unnatural in-between. And it blocks the unity, holds people off, and eventually decays into obsession, possession, and a really destructive form of madness. So Socrates said, "The madness of love is the greatest of heaven's blessings." And his reason for saying that is, The madness of love lets you get out of your own personal attachments and get out of your own mind. He was taught the secrets of love by a woman from Mantinea. And the story of that's related in the Symposium, which is a really simple little dialogue, and it's quite a beautiful thing to read. You could read it over a cappuccino one Sunday afternoon down at Mount Hawthorn if you wanted to. It's really simple, it's very straightforward. At first, Socrates asks her about love. I'm going to pull a surprise here. I'm going to ask Mrs. Kruger, do you mind coming up here and reading a part of this? It's only a very short dialogue, so I'll read the bold and you read the other. You also got to read that. Is he mortal?
No.
So he's asking her about love, all right? So I'm Socrates, I'm young and stupid, and this is Diotima, who's wise in the ways of love. And I ask her, is he mortal?
No.
What then?
He is neither mortal nor immortal, but in between the two.
What is he, Diotima?
He is a great spirit, and he is intermediate between the divine and the mortal.
Well, what's his power?
He interprets between gods and men, conveying and taking across to the gods the prayers and sacrifices of men, and to men the commands and replies of the gods. He is the mediator who spans the chasm which divides the world of men and the world of the gods. Therefore in him all is bound together. For God mingles not with man, but through love all the intercourse and converse of God with man, whether awake or asleep, is carried on.
No, I think that's it. Thank you. Thank you. That's not bad, is it? Imagine meeting someone who could teach you like that. Who could teach you like that. Read the Symposium, honestly, you'll love it. But you have to read it not knowing, you know, and you have to read it understanding that when Socrates is asking his questions, he doesn't know. People think that Socrates in the dialogues is just playing a game, pretending he doesn't know when he does know. He really doesn't know. He wants to undertake an inquiry. He wants people to wonder with him. So he's not being ironic. He doesn't know. So read the Symposium, you'll love it. So he describes love as this universal power. In Sanskrit, the word is prema, the inherent substance that holds all things together. That's sort of natural in between. And it surprises us with its presence in innumerable ways during the day, but unfortunately we're not awake enough all the time to recognize it. I was sitting in a coffee shop, and there was a mother sitting at a table, and she had a baby in a pram, infant, tiny infant. Every single person that walked past that pram facing the baby smiled. Have you ever seen an infant asleep in a pram and loathed it? This is not possible. That's only one simple example, but you know, to recognize the breaking forth of this underlying substance of love in the fabric of things, in the natural, pedestrian, everyday things that we live through, is a way to connect with it. But it's only possible through a spirit of inquiry. It's really only possible by wondering about its presence. You don't have to come up with a theory about it and lay it over everything, but just wonder, is it possible? Is it possible that the underlying substance of everything is love? Now, what I'd like to invite you to do now is to, we're running out of time a little bit, and I want to provide time for some open conversation before we stop. But what I'd like to do, if you're happy to do this, and if you're not happy, then that's fine, you don't have to follow it, but I'd like to invoke the power of imagination now to proceed with this wondering about the underlying substance of love. Now, it's not going to be possible for me to brainwash you in 4 minutes, so there's no need to be frightened of that, but I'm going to lead you through a sort of a reflection. And it does depend on the power of imagination. Just see what it reveals, all right? So, imagine this, and give imagination time to wonder. Imagine the entire world as a single being, a single vast being encompassing the entire world. Imagine all the rivers of the world are his veins, flowing into and out of the ocean of his heart. Imagine the trees and grasses are his hair. The wide spaces of the skies are his eyes. The sun is his sense of sight. And day and night are his eyelids. Imagine this. This universal person. Now imagine yourself as this universal person. The heavens all together form your chest. All of the powers in all of the heavens are your arms. The 4 points of the compass, as far as the ends of the world, are your ears. All sound is your sense of hearing. All smells are your sense of smell. And the air, everywhere, possessed of infinite strength, is your breath. When you smile, the worlds tremble with love. When your eyes shine, the universe of stars and suns and moons begin to shine. Everything that is made and everything that is not made are a part of you. You are universal, the living form of love absolute. You are neither she, nor he, neither me, nor you, neither this, nor that, but all as one. In action, you are the executive force. In thought, you are revelation. Imagine yourself living in the hearts of all. Now there's the power of imagination, opening up possibilities. So we began with the story of these two lovers, lover and object of love. And when philia, wisdom, and Sophia, love, come together, then the two presiding powers in the human instrument of reason and devotion increase in their transformative energy. Without love, reason can be dry and hard. Without reason, love can be so soft as to be formless. But gathered together, reason and love, like the two hands of the potter shaping a pot, the inside hand of love and the outside hand of discipline, can create a beautifully formed pot, just as love and reason together can create a beautifully formed human being. So during the course of this hour's presentation, you've willingly and very generously followed through a line of inquiry and undertaken a couple of exercises. What's it raised in you about the nature of love? What questions has it raised? What would you say about all this?
A paradox?
A paradox. Who was that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a paradox. It's lovely, isn't it? It's a lovely paradox. What's the effect of the paradox on your thinking? Does it make you noisy?
No.
It's like a Zen koan, you know? How do you make this the sound of one hand clapping? And the whole point of the koan was to bring the mind to a point of silence. The Greek word that Plato aims for is aporia, which we wrongly translate as apathy. But aporia is that state where the paradox is so striking that any sense of knowing is suspended and you're open to new knowledge. So it's a wonderful state to be in. You can't receive anything with a clenched fist, can you? It needs to be open. So it's a gift of paradox. You've been blessed. What else? Is there anything you'd like to ask or say? There's no pressure. We've got 12 minutes. We can stop early if you would like to.
I was interested in you saying feel, because I was aware that it wasn't my mind that was in operation. It was definitely me.
No, discursive mind has got its function, but when it tries to do executive jobs that it's not equipped for, it can just obscure the whole issue, can't it?
I thought of times when I had felt amazing love. And one of them, of course, was having my first baby.
Yes, of course. That must, yes.
But I also felt great love when I loved him.
The same love as you had when they came?
I don't know how to explain that.
No. Can I ask a couple of questions? How old was your child when you lost? 8 months. So you had 8 months with this child. Boy or a girl? Boy?
Our only boy, too.
Your only boy.
However, because he left, another child came who exemplified him and all sorts of other things. She's beautiful.
So it's the gift of love again, isn't it? Isn't it remarkable how, you would think under normal circumstances that the attachment of a mother to a child is the most noble attachment in the world. But by your lack of attachment, you've made that child immortal and always perfect. And there he is, reborn as this girl. Maybe. You think? He's her son. Right. And that love isn't something that you generate, is it?
No, because it was sort of beyond me.
What's it like surrendering to that?
Because I was aware of, it was quite challenging in a way, because I was aware of my husband's deep grief. And he was a man who wasn't able to
Yeah, but could you speak up just a little bit? I'm sorry.
He was a man who wasn't able to express his emotions. And I was crying, and he said, "Stop crying." Because I think he would have,
Because that same I'm not going to support this with somebody else would like to say. What about that?
I can't hear it.
You can't hear it, right? That's such a show. I just like to say thank you. Like you say thank you. That's a lovely story. Beautiful story. So there's years ago, not that long ago, I think my eldest daughter was 16, and I was going to Cambodia with a group of children, school children. It's one of these volunteerism exercises, where you take boys from school, children from exclusive schools, and they go to the jungles in Cambodia and help build houses for the villagers. Anyway, somebody whoever was organising this was a group of boys, 30 boys, but two of the teachers, myself included, had a daughter, and we were allowed to bring our daughters with us on this trip. And somebody who organised the trip had decided that it would be a really good thing for these children to get a real sense of what the Khmer Rouge had done in Cambodia. So the first thing they did was organise them to go to the killing fields, which is a pretty traumatic place to go. I won't get into detail of this, but it's pretty traumatic. Bones underfoot, the whole trip. And then they thought it would be a good idea if these children were blindfolded and put into the back of a van and taken to the torture centres that the Khmer Rouge had set up for interrogating people, and the blindfolded these. And the interrogation centre was a high school in the middle of Phnom Penh, which is maintained by the Vietnamese when they liberated Phnom Penh. Bubble walls and photographs of the victims who'd been tortured there. So these young people were quite traumatised by this. It was quite sort of the wrong thing to do anyway. It was well intentioned, but it was the wrong thing to do. And later that night, we came back to the hotel, and somebody who was a qualified counsellor was meant to take a report back or observations from these children. The whole idea was to try and get them connected to an emotional experience, which is a bit. I'm sitting there, and I'm under authority, so I'm just sort of sitting there. My daughter's over there. All of these children are gathered sitting on the floor there. He's running the thing there. I look across and I see my daughter who's got her head down, quietly sobbing. The other girl wasn't there, so she was the only girl there, all the rest were boys. And the boys are very conscious of her quietly sobbing. She wasn't making a noise, she was just eating. And the fellow that was running it was trying to raise questions with the rest of the boys about the events of the day. And there was this lull because they didn't want to answer while she was in that experience. So I said to her, "Maddie," she looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. She's right across there. "Why are you crying?" And she shakes her head. So I asked her again, "Why are you crying?" And she shakes her head. So I so wanted to go over to her. But I said, she got on her hands and knees and started to come over, and the boys made way for her and helped her sit up. She sat on my lap and I hugged her. She became quieter and quieter. And then one of the boys, 16-year-old boy, said, "I thought the world was full of love, but today I saw you. And I can't conversation that unfolded from that point was a conversation that unfolded in a field of love. And the healing power of it was profound. And in many ways, you brought this first session to a beautiful end with that description of your son and your daughter. And yet again, you're equal. I think we'll draw this to a close, but I'd like to draw it to a close in quietness rather than anything else. So, just as we are, without any adoption of posture or anything else, be aware of the weight of the body in the chair. What we're going to do is bring the mind into the present moment through the agency of the body, which can only be in the present moment. It can't be anywhere else. But the mind can be in the past or the future. But the body can only be in the present moment. So let the mind connect with the body. Feel the weight of the body in the chair. Feel the pressure of clothes on the skin. Feel the air moving in and out of the body. All of this is a sense of touch. Let the eyes receive colour and form. Let the hearing receive all sound. Let the mind become still, like the still surface of the lake. There may be superficial movements on the surface of the lake, but let them come to pass. There may be movements that rise from below, let them come to pass. Whatever the level of stillness now, let it be deeper. And deeper. And deeper still. May all that has arisen and all that is to follow flow from this, through this, for this, seated in the heart's core. And maintain the mudra.